Hi viewers, this is Ajay. I am back with lesson 3 on astrology. In the first lesson, I gave brief description and introduction to astrology. In the second lesson, I told about the 12 basic rhythms on the earth and their close relationship with the life on earth. And I also explained about the 9 objects which are directly responsible for 12 rhythms on the earth. In this lesson, I am going to tell you about geometry, the footprints of the god. At the end of this lesson, you will understand why I call the geometry as footprints of the god. It took me a while to figure out how to explain this concept as simple as possible because this is the very basis for astrology and it has some of the complicated concepts like Ayanamsa, ascendant and some other key concepts in astrology. Without understanding these concepts properly, we cannot go ahead and look into the birth chart and analyze your future. So this is very basic foundation for astrology and I wanted to make it as clear as possible and as simple as possible. So I have spent a lot of effort in this lesson, so I request you to kindly follow the lesson from beginning to ending without any interruption. The 12 rhythms of the moon directly control the 6 seasons on the planet Earth, and the 6 seasons have direct control over all the life on the Earth. Thus, the 12 rhythms of the moon have direct control over the entire life on planet Earth, and these 12 rhythms have direct control from the 9 planets in the sky, the 9 moving objects have direct dictatorship over the 12 rhythms. Actually, the 12 rhythms are the reflection of the 9 objects locked in the geometry. After the understanding of 12 rhythms and their relationship with 9 planets, the next biggest question was how 9 objects in the sky are responsible for 12 rhythms and what is the relationship of 9 objects and with 12 rhythms, or we can say the simply permutations and combinations of 9 and 12. So the biggest question was how 9 objects are controlling the 12 rhythms, because if you understand how they are controlling the 12 rhythms, we can predict what is going to happen tomorrow with the help of this relationship. So the early human beings have started recording the patterns of 9 objects in the sky and relating them with the 12 rhythms and the events on the planet Earth. In fact, the 9 planets have no control or relationship with the 12 rhythms on the Earth. They cannot produce the 12 rhythms. The thing which is producing the 12 rhythms is the motion, not the actual planet. When the planet is in a certain motion, when the planet is in a certain rhythm, that rhythm is creating a season and it is triggering an event on the planet Earth. So here the reason for the rhythm is the motion or the geometry of the planet, but not the actual planet. So the geometry is more important than the actual planetary properties. When you understand the geometry, you can predict all the rhythms properly. When you understand the rhythms, you understand the life. When you understand the life, you can predict everything about the life events and the weather conditions, everything on the earth. So the geometry is the key. When you understand the geometry, you understand the solar system and the planet earth and the life as well. So the human beings have started observing, recording and relating the geometry with the events on the earth. So this is the next biggest breakthrough in astrology. The next challenge in astrology was creating a map of heavens with which they can accurately and precisely record the planetary movements and their positions and relate them with the events and the rhythms on the earth. Creating a celestial map to track the planetary positions was much more difficult and a challenging task compared to mapping the territory of a country, because the territory has certain landmarks with which we can easily trace the borders, but the sky is uniform. Wherever you see, it is pure space, and when the planet comes to that point in space, it was very difficult to record it and observe it in a later point of time. So they have faced many challenges while recording the planetary positions. When you want to remember a new way that you recently traveled, you will use landmarks as a reference points, because the landmarks doesn't move. So, and they have specific attributes which you can remember and relate to the path. Similarly, they started looking for the landmarks in the sky which doesn't move over the time as the planets. The planets cannot be used as landmarks because their position keep on changing from day to day. So they started looking for something which doesn't change from day to day. They found the stars which don't change their position from time to time. It's very difficult to remember the stars as landmarks. I mean an individual star, because the individual star is very difficult to identify because all the stars are similar in look and the attributes from the earth. So they identified group of stars with a certain shape which they can easily track and remember, and they have come up with certain groups of stars and they called each group as constellation. The equivalent word for star constellation in Sanskrit is nakshatra mandalam. Nakshatra means star and the mandalam means a group. A group of stars is called nakshatra mandalam, and they have identified 27 constellations or nakshatra mandalas along the ecliptic. I will explain you what's the ecliptic in the next few minutes. Over a period of time, they group the stars into constellations and they managed to map the sky with the constellations. Using those constellations, they could track a particular point in the sky. Then they started recording the movement of planets across these constellations. They made a map with this constellation, and when a planet moves to particular constellation, they noted the position of the planet, and when it moves to next constellation, they change the position of the planet, and when a planet moves to particular constellation, they started studying the events that are getting triggered on the planet Earth, and they related the events on the planet Earth and the position of the planets in the sky. I mean the position of the planet in a particular constellation. The map produced with the constellations and the planetary positions in it is an essentially a geocentric map. I mean, the map tells that all the planets are revolving around the Earth, but in fact, it doesn't mean that, because the planetary positions were recorded from the Earth. That's why the map describes the planetary positions as in the sky in a particular constellation as seen from the Earth, but they definitely know that the planets are not revolving around the Earth. They were not satisfied with the map, which has constellations as reference points to track the planetary movement. They wanted to improve it further, so they started looking for the relationship between the map and the patterns or the rhythms on the Earth. So the Earth has 12 basic rhythms as we have discussed in the previous lessons. They wanted to apply these 12 into the map. So they ended up dividing the map into 12 equal parts. If you see the map, if you see a circle divided into 12 equal parts, it is essentially clock. The clock has 12 divisions. The clock originated from the zodiac. The zodiac has 12 divisions and the clock has 12 divisions. Each division in the zodiac corresponds to a moon cycle or the revolution of moon around Earth. The moon completes 12 revolutions by the time Earth makes one complete revolution around the sun. So the 12 becomes a complete rhythmic number. It keeps on repeating itself again and again. An year is divided into 12 months and a zodiac is divided into 12 parts or 12 signs or 12 rashis. Each Rasi corresponds to a moon cycle. Each month corresponds to a moon cycle. They identified 27 star constellations along which the 9 planets are revolving. They identified 27 distinct star constellations and they wanted to divide the complete circle into 12 divisions because 12 is a complete rhythmic number in which each number represents a moon rhythm. And there are 9 objects which are revolving along the sky, or 9 planets. So they thought that each division should have 9 subdivisions, or each division, all the circles here represent the star constellations and the division represents sign. It is a zodiac sign. There are 12 zodiac signs, 27 star constellations and 9 planets. So they divided each zodiac sign into 9 subdivisions because 9 is a complete object number. Finally, they ended up dividing 27 constellations into 108 divisions. This is a bit tricky concept and bit complicated as well, so I am repeating it again. There are 27 constellations and 12 signs in the zodiac, or a circle, imaginary circle, which is drawn around the Earth, and they wanted to divide each zodiac sign into 9 subdivisions. So the zodiac sign will have 12 into 9, which is 108. So each star constellation is divided into 4 padas. I'm just summarizing what we have learned in this lesson. To track the planetary movements, they identified stars. They did draw an imaginary circle around the Earth, which is extending to infinite. They call this circle as zodiac. To define the circle, they use star constellations as reference points, and they further divided the circle into 12 divisions, in which each division is called a sign, and then they track the movement of planets along this circle. So At any given point of time, the planet should be in one of the constellations. The constellations make the complete circle. So when a planet is in one of the constellations, obviously it will be in one of the zodiac sign.
But the story of Earth's conception begins well before midnight. Originally, our rocky planet was nothing but a cloud of dust floating in space. Dust that was created from huge, ancient stars when they reached the end of their lives and exploded. From these supernovas erupted all the elements that we have today: iron, carbon, even gold and radioactive elements like uranium. As the stardust cooled, it became more dense. Gravity took hold, and the dust cloud collapsed towards its center, forming a giant rotating disk, the solar nebula. In the center, a star, our sun, was born. Hydrogen and helium was swept out to the far reaches of the disk, where they condensed to form the gas planets. Left behind was a cloud of dust grains orbiting the sun.
They're circling around the early sun and little racetracks, and occasionally grains traveling nearby will collide. Something like this happens in your house. If you look under your bed, you find that little bits of dust are collecting together into big, large dust balls. And something like that must be what happened in the solar system too. If they collide slowly and at low angles, then they can add up to a larger object and gradually grow.
As the dust grew into rocks, the force of the impacts generated enormous heat. Sometimes the colliding rocks simply destroyed each other.
If they collide head-on, or at a higher angle, or at higher velocities, then they'll actually break apart, like shooting a gun at a wall.
But some of the rocks survived. As they grew larger and larger, their gravity grew strong enough to attract even more rocks. It's an almost impossible task for scientists to work out the exact date of birth of our planet, because all the evidence of early Earth has long since been destroyed. The only clues the scientists could turn to were other celestial bodies created at the same time. Asteroids, the rocky debris left over from the formation of the solar system. Between the orbit of Mars and Jupiter, over 3 trillion lumps of rock are trapped in the asteroid belt. Some of them are as primitive as the dust grains which built the Earth. Occasionally, collisions knock the asteroids off course. And every year, 40,000 tons of asteroids are ejected from their orbit and fall to Earth as meteorites. Some weigh as much as